You're listening to Saturday Morning Media. And now, back to our show. I have a lot of really cool friends who do a lot of really cool things. I wanted to make it a goal to sit down with these friends and spend about 15 minutes or so getting to know them better and find out about their past, present, and their future. The result is this show. My name is Grant Baciocco, and this is 15 Minutes With. Scott Syme Jr. is a magician, a theme park and ice cream enthusiast, and he's today's guest on 15 Minutes With. Scott, thanks for coming on the show today.
Yes, well, thank you very much for having me. This is great.
My pleasure. So you are a very creative individual. I've watched your magic several times. We've done several shows together. But I want to go back. What was sort of the first creative thing that you got into as a kid?
Oh boy. Well, my 8th grade year in middle school, at the end of the year, everybody had to do this huge thing called the Share Project. And you had to just pick a topic and you had to just do a gigantic report on it. It took all year. So I decided to do it on Walt Disney. And because back then as well, I was just a huge fan of theme parks. How do they make these things? How do they make them better? You know, where do these ideas come from? So I wanted to tap into that. So I did it on Walt Disney and Disneyland. Mm-hmm. And so that was like kind of the big report that I did. And my dad and I, we even built like a ride out of Connects.
Oh, wow.
And it was amazing. It was really, really cool.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, on the drive over, all the potholes and bumps, the ride completely broke in the car. We didn't even get it out of the car. I just left it in the car. It was completely broken. It was really, really sad. But I had a whole storyboard and it showed exactly what it was. It was a ride based on Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, an old Disney movie.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. So that's interesting. Like you were aspiring Imagineer, would you say?
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, I was, whenever my parents have been. Well, first of all, I'm from San Francisco, mm-hmm. and so my parents would always take me to Disneyland. Our family to Disneyland once a year, once every other year when I was growing up, and I loved it. Mm-hmm. And whenever I would ride the rides, I would always look around and see where the lighting was, where the special effects coming from. I was just captivated by the whole experience, and I've always wondered, how do they make these things?
Yeah,
and where does this come from?
Yeah,
it was like I've always felt like rides are like 3D interactive magic shows. It's like all these tricks and illusions happening all around you as you're riding through it, and that's always captivated me.
Right, especially something like the Haunted Mansion has
of course, yes.
Magic trick type stuff.
Absolutely, it's my favorite ride.
Yeah. Were your parents creative at all? Did they have creative pursuits?
Yes. My dad is a real estate broker up in San Francisco. Mm-hmm. My dad has always had a passion and enthusiasm for building things, just coming up with different ideas. I wouldn't say he's a person that's head in the clouds, but he's definitely a person that I rely on for multiple ideas and outlooks and different takes of what he thinks about. Like if I presented him an idea, I trust his opinion on things.
Right.
So yeah, my dad's very, very creative, and his mom, my grandmother, is a very gifted artist. She paints to this day. She's 81, and she's just an amazing painter. So yeah, and then my mom, she's a children's pastor up in San Francisco at this church, and she's always also been very creative. And every time I do voices, or when I got into puppetry, or doing these impersonations of people, my mom's also Scottish. She would always say, "Oh, Scott, you get that from my side of the family." So,
yeah. And when did magic enter the picture?
So, unfortunately, when I was very, very young, my mom's dad was dying, mm-hmm. and he was on his deathbed with cancer. And we're over in Scotland, and my parents put me in another room just away from the sadness and all that. And on repeat, basically, was Mary Poppins, Bed Knobs and Broomsticks, and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Mm-hmm. And those movies really sculpted my mind. I really thought that Willy Wonka and Mary Poppins and Eglantine Price were like wizards and magicians. I really thought that was magic to me.
Right.
Unfortunately, when I got into magic, obviously none of that stuff happens on stage, so I was very, very disappointed. But that to me was really magical, and that was kind of like the beginning of it when I was like 3 years old, around there, 2 or 3, I can't remember, something like that.
Yeah, and did you start looking at magic books or?
Yeah, I remember I was at the Main Street Magic Shop at Disneyland, mm-hmm. and then I bought my first trick. It was a rising card, deck, which I still do to this day. And just a simple trick: pick a card, put it back in the deck, and it rises out by itself.
Yeah.
So that's how it really got started. That was like the first trick, and I've had magic sets, but I never really got into them by reading them and doing the tricks, But when I was in college, that's when I really started buying all these different tricks. I was poor, and my granny from Scotland sent me money, and I spent it all on these magic tricks. And she was very upset about that. She's like, "Oh, you should have gotten clothes or new shoes or something, not silly magic tricks."
Yeah.
So I bought all these magic tricks, and I started doing magic. I didn't have a job either, so I worked at I went to 4 restaurants, and I asked, "Can I do magic?" And 3 of them said no. 1 of them said yes. And I started doing magic for this restaurant, and that was the first week after I bought all the magic tricks. That was awful.
So it was like close-up table magic type
Close-up
stuff?
table magic. It was really pitiful. It was awful.
But was that the first kind of performance? Is that the first time you were doing it live?
That was like my first time. I was just doing simple things. Hey, can I borrow a quarter? I'd borrow a quarter, and then I'd bite off the quarter, make it look like I bit it off. Every time I'd get caught, even like this old guy, "What's in your other hand?" Nothing. So I did that, but then a couple of weeks later, I got a job as a actor in a Wild West stunt show, and so I'd be in the show all the time during the week, and then if I was running sound and lights, I would do magic as a pre-show to get the audience warmed up, and I would do magic and whatnot. So that was a lot of fun too.
Yeah, where was that at?
That was in Tucson, Arizona.
Okay.
I went to the school at the University of Arizona.
Okay.
And I was in the stunt show for 6 months. I was just getting paid to be blown up and gunfights, and it was just a ton of fun.
Did you have training? Like, did they train you?
They trained you. So
yeah, okay.
It was really, really hot because it's the desert. So all of our rehearsals were after the show at night. So we'd have 2 shows a night, 3 shows on weekends, and then we'd do rehearsal. So, I'm not really that in shape, and I kind of look like the everyday common man, but all the rest of the actors were really buff, skinny, relatively smaller dudes. I'm 6'1", they were like 5'10" or something like that.
Yeah.
The director, Jerry, he was a taller guy too. But yeah, so it was kind of interesting. Like, here's an average Joe looking guy with all these buff, women and men, But yeah, so we would do rehearsals, and so Jerry said, "Okay, today we're going to rehearse crotch kicks." I'm like, "Okay, we're going to kick each other in the crotch all night."
Yeah. And was that at a theme park?
It was at this place called Trail Dust Town. It was The main attraction was the restaurant. It was called Pinnacle Peak, and they had these gigantic steaks. But built around the restaurant was like a Frontierland type place, like a main street, and there was like a big ballroom, and then schools rented that out for dances, weddings, all that stuff. There was a shooting gallery, like at Disneyland.
Right.
And then attached to all this was the stunt show. And it was like an arena. It was all outdoors. It could fit like 350 people. And it was a full-on set. Like we had, it was 2 stories, people jumping off buildings. We had gigantic explosions and gunfire and fight choreography. And there were comedy shows.
Yeah.
No.
And what made you like sign up for that? Just you saw an ad for it and you went for it? Or?
I was getting ice cream with a friend of mine, and I didn't have a job, and I've always wanted to go to the Trail Dust Town, and I didn't know that they had a stunt show, so we checked it out, and I was just in awe. I was just enraptured and captured by it.
Yeah.
And I said, "I want to do this. This looks so much fun. Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
So I didn't know if they were hiring or not, so I just went up to them and I said, "Are you guys hiring?" And they said, "We actually have an audition coming up." So the day of the audition, I woke up and I said, "I'm in no shape to do any of the cool stuff that those guys did. I can't do sit-ups. I can't do push-ups. I can't do pull-ups. Nothing." So I was like, "I'm not going to do it. I'm just not going to do it." Then after like an hour of toiling with those thoughts, I said, "You know what? I told them that I'd be there. I don't want to waste their time. I'll just do it. I'll just have fun." And I've had improv experience in the back before in some acting. So I did it. I just said I'm just going to do it for the fun of it, and then I did it, and they gave me the job on the spot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long did you do that for?
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
And then did you it was time to move on after that? Or?
It's another crazy story. I was actually I was offered to be a youth pastor in Laredo, Texas, of all things. So complete 180. I wasn't sure whether to take that job or not. I decided to take it. even though the stunt show was amazing, I loved it. I mean, I had dreams about that place I still do sometimes. I love it. I would go back to it in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But yeah, then I took that job in Laredo, and so I was a youth pastor for this all Spanish speaking church, and I don't speak Spanish. And it's a crazy long story.
Yeah. Did you bring any of the stunt show into the youth No, I'm kidding.
They did have silks. It was kind of crazy. They had like these silks from the ceiling, and then like during the worship songs, like these girls would go up and like do these acrobatics things.
Oh, really?
And I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Did you bring any magic to that?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I was doing magic a lot. My office was a really, really small office. I think it was a janitor's closet at one point. So I decorated it, and there was just magic everywhere, and everybody knew me as that. Like, oh, he has magic.
I know, like people kind of know, like, the famous magicians, the people who are more like Penn and Teller, David Copperfield, Lance Burton, that kind of stuff. But is there somebody who like maybe people don't know that they should look at?
Oh my goodness, yes. My favorite magician, his name is Darren Brown. He lives in Europe. He is kind of like, it's kind of like the David Blaine mixed with Copperfield, in my opinion. I don't want to do any injustice if there's any of the magicians listening. What? That's not how he is. Anyways, Darren Brown is amazing. He does these full-fledged stage shows, like one-man stage shows. And he doesn't have like a lot of apparatus and a lot of like gigantic props. A lot of it is mentalism. Mm-hmm. And they're really kind of theater pieces mixed in with magical elements, essentially. And all of his stuff is just extremely baffling. Like, I don't even know how a lot of it works.
Yeah.
And I love magic. I go to the Magic Castle a lot with my friends, and his stuff, like, it always looks new. And what's also interesting is today he just opened up a brand new theme park ride in Europe, and it's a ghost train ride, and it's 13 minutes long. It has 3D like Oculus Rift stuff and other elements. So really, really cool. I love that guy. Cool. Definitely check him out.
Yeah, for sure. Now we met performing at a kids show at Flappers locally, but you do shows for adults as well, right? For all ages type thing. Do you have one that you prefer? Like, do you prefer little older crowds or younger crowds?
I really prefer the young at heart crowds. I don't know. That sounds so sappy. I really like doing shows for teenagers to young adults. I don't like doing shows for parents, let's say, and the older crowd, I guess, because I like my humor is very on the fly. It's very jokey. It's very coy. I would say my show is very childlike, but it's not childish.
Yeah,
and that's what I kind of get off of. I love just being crazy, but not to the point where it's just like childish dumb. It's just kind of out there fun.
Right. No, I think your show is it is very funny, and the times I've seen it. But what I love about your show is your delivery is almost so sly. You know what I mean? Because like you'll say a joke, and like people don't even realize it's a joke.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. It's a great way. Yeah. Like you'll throw something out, then people will get like, oh, wait a minute.
Then I've already moved on. Yeah, which I need to work on. But yeah.
No. I think it's great. And another thing I wanted to talk to you about, and I do not want to give away any element of a trick because I want people to come see you.
Sure.
But a couple times I've seen you do a trick, and part of the reveal involves social media.
Oh yes,
and without getting too into that, but do you like finding something like social media and going, how can I use this?
Yes, it's mainly, how can I get more followers? So, so I make them look at my whole page. I don't tell them to follow me, but the choice is theirs. But
right.
But yeah, I think it's interesting because a lot of times, like people will ask, what kind of magic do you do? Well, do you do anything that's 2016, like new technology and all that? And like a lot of magic is old arts from long ago, and a lot of it is still adaptable even to new technology. And so what I'm really doing, it may involve a cell phone or like social media, but really the principle is something age old.
Right.
It's just a newly adapted thing. Whether I'm forcing a card and it's on your cell phone, or there's like a hidden message in social media or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just an old art of forcing a card, but you're seeing it on a different platform, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. I also wanted to ask, like, how do you go about, like, do you work on a new trick every day, or like, are you always working on stuff? Or?
I'm trying to work on a lot of stuff. I think my show right now is in like a big transition, because sometimes when we perform at Flappers, I feel like it either works or it doesn't work. And right now, I really feel like I need to take the next step of making it work every time. Because sometimes if there's not a big audience, like I'm really heavily reliant on the audience. If it's not a big audience, I feel that my show doesn't do well. But I feel that I should work on that, because I think I should give the amount of entertainment, the same amount of entertainment to 5,000 people to the same if there's a crowd of 5 people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's something that I personally need to work on. But I'm constantly working on tricks. I'm constantly working on and thinking of new ideas of how to present something different. And I'll think of something, I'll write it down, and I won't do anything with it. And then it's kind of weird. Like a couple months later or years later, I'll see a magic show and I'll employ all the different things that I thought of. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not taking credit like, oh, those were my ideas, but it's like, oh man, like I was on the right track. Like that could have worked.
Do you like keep a journal? Or...
I keep a journal. It's on my phone, which isn't the best, but it's on my phone. But I just write down ideas whenever I feel inspired. I'll write down something, or if there's like a really fun trick that I like, I might write down, like, instead of doing it this way, do it this way, or bring a different spin to it. There's one trick I just bought. It allows you to take away the ability of reading from somebody. It allows you to take away the ability to read.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And I wanted to present that because I was diagnosed with dyslexia when I was in there's my dyslexia, in elementary school. And so I thought it would be kind of cool to give somebody the experience of what it's like to have dyslexia. But I don't know, that could be kind of haunting or creepy or strange. But
no, that's interesting. I look forward to seeing that.
Maybe I'll do it on you. Who knows?
Excellent. Well, Scott, if people want to follow you on social media or check you out, where can they go?
They can find me, basically, if you just type in my name, Scott Syme Jr., SYME Jr., on Facebook, Instagram, and I'm newly on Twitter. So.
Okay. Well, I'll have links to all that in the show notes.
And Snapchat, of course.
Yes. Do you do any tricks on Snapchat?
Sometimes I do, but my Snapchat, I'm always doing something fun. So
yeah.
I don't do food pics every day. I don't do basic stuff. I like doing fun things.
Awesome. Well, Scott, thank you very much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Scott Syme Jr. is a magician, and he was today's guest on 15 Minutes With. Connect with Scott on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook by searching for his name, Scott Syme Jr., and that last name is Syme. 15 Minutes With on the GrantCast is a production of Saturday Morning Media and is made possible by the Saturday Morning Media Patreon patrons who've gone to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media and set up a monthly donation for as little as $1 a month. Huge thanks to Shay Stewart, Mer Lafferty, Jeff Peterson, Dale Gadania, Steven Staver, Jackie Klimo, Melissa Crawford, Chuck, Matthew Wayne Selznick, Dave Slusher of the Evil Genius Chronicles, Mike Coughlin, Dorothy Baciocco, John D., Kathy Crawford, Brian Greer, Carrie Whitney, Chuck Tomasi, Chris Foster, Stephen Ing, Clinton of ComedyForecast.com, Vicky DeVries, Mike Wobschall, Twitter user Buttsinggear, a.k.a. Wildcat, Eve Cunning, Mike Hamilton, and Gaston Moreno. If you'd like to support this show and the other fun content from Saturday Morning Media, become a patron. Head on over to patreon.com/Saturday Morning Media today and set up your donation. You can also tell a friend about the show or leave the show a review on iTunes. And while you're there on iTunes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. That way, when a new episode is released, it'll be delivered directly to you. Also, your subscribing helps other people find the show. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll talk to you next time. The GrantCast is copyright 2016 Saturday Morning Media, Grant Baciocco, executive producer. All rights reserved. www.saturdaymorningmedia.com. You've been listening to Saturday Morning Media. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.